Okay, so that was a lot. I told you it's not the end of the world what happened last night, and it's not. Mike Cernovich just came on here and told you that we should be concerned about the midterms. And you know what? He's right, too. We should be. So maybe you're sitting there thinking, oh, boy, what do I do? Well, allow me to give you just a little bit of motivation. Just going to spend a few minutes, give you a little bit of motivation. You know how terrible, you remember, of course, how terrible it was under the Biden administration. I'm not just talking about policies, how truly evil the government became. These people just turned all the guns of the government and aimed them at you, aimed them at me, aimed them at Trump, just deployed the government against their political opponents. Truly, truly evil. But I want to remind you of this. These people aren't sorry. To this day, and I have asked for this several times, I have asked for emails, I've asked friends. To this day, I have not heard of a single Democrat in the United States of America, not just people on TV, a single Democrat that has expressed that maybe arresting Trump with a bunch of bogus felony charges was wrong. Not one has come out and said, that was probably the wrong thing to do. They're not sorry. This was James Comey on MSNBC.
I know Republicans these days aren't big in thinking about principle or precedent. They're going to be deeply sorry that that disappears, because someday there will be a Democratic president and there'll be investigations of Republican office holders. If I'm them, I sure would want these career people in place, making sure that it's done in the right way. Look, I've long thought that you could shrink the size of some of the Department of Justice headquarters units, but this is like burning down the house and then standing in front of the pile of ashes and saying, yeah, we really did need to retile the guest bath, right? This is destroying the place at a cost that's going to take years and years to rebuild.
They're coming back harder if we give them power again. Eric Holder, he's out there on the podcast circuit. Here's what he said.
It pains me to say this. I think the Supreme Court is a broken institution. And it's something that has to be, I think, a part of the national conversation in 26 and in 28. What are we going to do about the Supreme Court? And I think that we have to think about, again, talking about the acquisition and the use of power. If there is a Democratic trifecta in 2028, and I think the possibility of that is pretty good. Supreme Court reform is something that has to be considered. Term limits, I think, at a minimum, potentially expanding the court is something I think that also should be considered.
What we saw under the Biden administration was the warm-up act. Maybe you're recalling 4 years of evil and you're saying to yourself, woo, can't believe we lived through that. Thank goodness that's over. We never have to deal with it again. No. The only lesson the communists learned from last time is he didn't hit you hard enough. The only lesson these people learned is they didn't do enough evil things. They didn't shred the Constitution enough. They didn't jail enough of their political opponents. That's the only thing they learned. Last night we took it on the chin. I got that. Sucked. The midterm elections, maybe they'll go our way, maybe they won't. But we have, starting right now, we have time to begin fighting back. You, personally, me, personally. Are we going to get involved? Are we going to knock on doors? We're going to phone bank for candidates. If we have money, are we going to donate to candidates and causes? Are we going to do the blocking and tackling necessary to ensure we're not wiped out at the midterms? That decision gets made now. I know everybody's licking their wounds today. I got it. It's one thing for you or me to talk about Arctic frost. It's terrible. The FBI, what are they doing? Jack Smith, what did they do? But it's another thing to actually be a victim of all this. And our next guest is one of the great congressmen we have, and we don't have very many. And he was also a victim of this, Congressman Scott Perry of the great state of Pennsylvania. Congressman, for those who don't know, who haven't seen you on here before, the floor is yours. You've more than earned it. What did they do to you? What happened?
Well, Jesse, thanks for having me on. Arctic frost, so named for a variety of oranges. Just keep that in mind. So Arctic frost was an operation to persecute and prosecute anybody involved with President Trump that had any questions about the 2020 election. Now, of course, I have thousands of constituents that called in, that came to see me, that emailed, that wrote me, that had questions and demanded me as their representative speak for them and ask these questions, which I did. The U.S. government didn't go after those thousands of people, but if your name was Peter Navarro, if your name was Steve Bannon, if your name was Scott Perry, if your name was a handful of sundry senators, the Department of Justice came after us, and Christopher Wray authorized the operation, which means Merrick Garland knew about it. And of course, the intention was to make sure that nobody ever questioned the Democrat Party again or any election, and certainly to throw President Trump in jail and make sure he never became president again. It's political persecution on a scale of places like Cuba, the Soviet Union, the Communist Party of China, North Korea. That's what happened in the United States, and we just lived long enough to survive it. And of course, they all believed that President Trump wasn't going to come back, so they all believed they were going to get away with it. But of course, it's unraveling as we speak.
All right, let's focus on the unraveling, if you don't mind. I love that the information is getting out there. I love that evil actors are getting named, shamed, some getting fired, but that's not near enough. It's just not enough. You can't use the FBI like a political arm. That's how nations end. It's that serious. What happens from here to the bad guys? Anything?
Well, in my opinion, they need to be investigated by the FBI and the Department of Justice, assuming they did at least one thing, which is likely violate the civil rights of many individuals that were their political targets. They need to be prosecuted for those crimes, and if found guilty, they need to serve time for those crimes.
Congressman, the FBI, you're right, we kind of need the FBI to look into the crimes, but the FBI is the one that committed a lot of the crimes to begin with. I understand we have new and much better leadership at the top, but that's at the top. There's still so much rot in there. Can we trust the FBI? Because I'll be honest, I don't.
Well, I don't know that I'm ever going to fully trust the FBI, and unfortunately, I think the rot goes pretty deep. And like you said, you know, the FBI agent that walked up to our rental property on vacation with where me and my in-laws, my wife and my two girls were staying, he's been relieved of his job, as have others, but that's not nearly enough. And I think, you know, as they build the case and evidence becomes available, it is my hope that they will start a criminal investigation, not just firing these people, but a criminal investigation for, if nothing else, violation of civil rights, which comes with a pretty heavy federal penalty. And you're right, to a certain extent, to a great extent, we're depending on the FBI and the Department of Justice to do that, and only time will tell. And of course, you know, we can't be satisfied with the fact that many of us are relieved, myself, Jeff Clark, Peter Navarro, Bannon, you know, that we don't have the FBI and the Department of Justice trying to bankrupt us, destroy our reputation, and throw us in jail. That's not enough. I mean, we're glad that we're through that part, but we have to send a signal that this can never happen again. And the best way to do that is to make sure that the people that were involved in it get punished with real punishments, which doesn't mean just losing your job at the federal, you know, at some federal agency and then go getting a job at MSNBC or CNN. It means going behind bars for at least the length of the Trump presidency. After that, if there's a Democrat, they're likely to be pardoned because they're going to start this stuff all over again, likely. But these guys have to know there's going to be consequences, and I think that's the only real answer to it.
John Brennan's starting to look a lot like a man who's pretty nervous. I'm sure you've already seen it. Here he was getting a little heated over the weekend.
Why wouldn't you know on the Hunter Biden? Why say it? Because I think, and you misrepresented that. We never said it was disinformation. We said it was Russian influence operations, which is what they do. There's a big difference between influence operations. No, you don't know that.
Yes, Comey
you don't
knew.
know. Comey knew.
The literature said it had all marks.
with all the hallmarks of.
He looks like a
Well-
man who maybe had one too many beers and starting to think about jail.
Yeah, look, we all in public life know you don't put your finger in somebody's chest and you can have a dialogue about it. Now, obviously, he disagrees and dislikes the narrative of the individual that was questioning him, but we know a whole lot about John Brennan, and we, at a minimum, we know that he should have never had any control of classified information, should never even have had a security clearance, let alone been at the top of one of the nation's security agencies. And I think we're going to find out, obviously, that he was involved in this heavily. He was involved in this sedition and the subversion around the president of the United States and the president's agenda. It is not treason because we don't have an enemy, a so-called enemy that we're at war with, but it is seditious activity, and he can be prosecuted for it, and he should be.
Outstanding. I'm a chip man. Everybody who knows me would say I'm a couple things. One, I'm a rope guy, and I'm a chip man. I love chips. I have been this way since I was a child. Not crackers, pretzels. I want chips. But I'm 44, and I have read the ingredients on the back of all those wonderful chips I've eaten in my life. It's really, really bad. So you want an alternative. Is there a healthy chip? And then you think to yourself, well, that's going to be gross. I'm sure there is. There's a healthy this and how that it's going to be gross. When I first heard about MASA chips, my buddy Mike Cernovich told me about it. I thought, it's going to be gross. It's going to be gross. They sent me a box of them. They're fantastic. They're my favorite chip. Go get some chips you can eat guilt-free. Guilt-free chips. Thank you, MASA Chips. Go to masachips.com/JesseTV. Saves you a fortune. Enjoy. Well, we're not going to let the Arctic frost thing go. That's the bad news. The good news is somehow, some way, Missouri, you wouldn't think it'd be Missouri, has turned into the anti-communist capital of the United States of America. You would think it'd be Texas or something like maybe South Carolina, but they just keep churning out studs. Senator now, Eric Schmitt joins us from the great state of Missouri. Senator, I'm thrilled you're there, but I'm mad the FBI spied on you. What happened?
Well, I mean, I said it, and maybe I understated that this whole thing is like 100 times worse than Watergate. If you put it in its full context, Jesse, you got at the beginning, Russiagate, of course, in 2016, Hunter Biden laptop suppression in 2020 to make sure he didn't, get back. And then when they get in, they start censoring. And then 3 days after President Trump announces he's running for president in 2022, a couple things happen. You got the criminal prosecution in Atlanta, criminal prosecution in New York. Then Jack Smith is appointed, this known henchman. He's a total dirtbag. Starts not just going after President Trump to put him in jail for the rest of his life, but this broad dragnet of, I was chairman of the Republican AG Association at the time, Charlie Kirk's organization, subpoenas, phone records of sitting senators. This is crazy. This is crazy. And Judge Boasberg, by the way, is right in the middle of all of it, with a special note in the subpoenas not to notify the senators, which is likely illegal, and for sure should the House should begin impeachment proceedings against Judge Boasberg for his conduct. So this thing is broad, it's sweeping, it's the weaponization of government, and we're still learning more. And if President Trump wouldn't have won, all this stuff would still be happening, right? And so anyway, we got to put a stop to it, and people have to be held accountable.
Senator, can I ask you a little bit more about Boasberg? Because everyone knows that name now, because of course he was front and center trying to stop everything Trump did as soon as he got elected again. And if no one was shocked to see that alien who was doing all the things to you and other people on the right. Can he be impeached? I know you're calling for it and I'm happy for it, but do we have the guts on the right to get rid of these bad judges? Because we can't fix anything with these judges here.
Right. Listen, I don't take that lightly. Like, I don't take it lightly, but like, it's not, impeachment is not just some scarecrow. Like, it actually has to mean something. And to put that in further context, he was the FISA court guy. He's the guy that gave a speech before Trump got in office about how he's going to thwart the agenda. Then he starts getting some of these cases. He wasn't the assignment judge for that day. Like on the big one, the illegal immigrant case that he was on vacation, Jesse. He got it 1 a.m. 1 a.m. Was he tipped off? I don't know. We should probably find out. Then we find out this Arctic frost stuff. He's right in the center of it. So absolutely, the House should move forward with impeachment inquiry. Then we come to the Senate. Now, do we have enough votes in the Senate to ultimately get that done? Are there enough Democrats that are going to agree to that? I don't know. But like at some point, we got to start doing something about these rogue judges.
Senator, the other bad actors, and there are just so many to name, but FBI agents, I understand many have been fired. We have the James Comeys, the John Brennans of the world. I don't like to tell people ridiculous things that can't happen and give people false hope. What level of accountability can we bank on? I don't want to sit here and say they're all going to prison. That's ridiculous and not true. But someone has to go to prison for all this. Is that possible?
Yeah, and I try to, that's why you and I get along so well. I try to do the same thing. I don't just try to throw the bombs out there if nothing's going to happen. But I do think, okay, so the statute of limitations on, let's just take the Russiagate stuff and a lot of this stuff. The statute of limitations sadly has run on some of these crimes. However, where I do think there's a real case to be made and could be made is on a conspiracy, because the statute of limitations essentially continues to run. So the example I've given is if you're a co-conspirator in mile marker 1, let's just say you made up a bunch of stuff about Trump having ties to Russia that you laundered through intelligence agencies like Comey, Brennan, and Clapper. Even though you leave government, or you take an exit ramp at mile marker 5, you are still liable for that criminal conduct that happens at mile marker 10. And that's where we're at. So I do think you can make a credible case that a conspiracy has existed now for almost 10 years that was based on, trumped up documents and fake charges against, him being a Russian asset. And you think of all the things that happened to try to sideline a presidential candidate, then a presidency, and then a guy running for re-election. I do think something can happen from there, and it should.
I love not paying Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile anymore. I've had all three of them. Isn't that terrible? My first cell phone company was AT&T, switched to Verizon, then switched to T-Mobile. So I've had them all. I'm not judging you, but man, when I've looked at their political activism, all the ESG, DEI filth, it kind of saddens me to know that I funded all that. Every month sitting there paying my bill on my cell phone, funding communism. I don't do that anymore. I'd switched to Pure Talk, the company led by a Vietnam veteran. 2 tours with Mac V. Sog in Vietnam. The company that hires Americans. And boy, is that rare anymore. All these other companies, they love to farm out American jobs, not Pure Talk. When you get a hold of Pure Talk, you'll talk to an American. Switch your cell phone service. You'll save money. Go to puretalk.com/JesseTV. This Arctic frost thing, I shouldn't say it's a big deal. It is. It's the biggest deal in the world, but is it big enough? Meaning, are people going to be going to prison for this because they have to? We can't have a secret police agency operating like this inside the country. Joining me now, somebody who was most definitely targeted by this whole thing, great senator from the state of Tennessee, Senator Marsha Blackburn. Senator, you were one of the people in the crosshairs of the Federal Bureau of Investigation for the dastardly crime of talking to Donald Trump. Could you break this down for us in more detail? What happened?
You got it, Jesse. I will. And as you say, it is a big deal. And it's bigger than Watergate, and it's far more expensive than Watergate. And as we go through this, I think the American people are going to see it. We're actually going to do a press conference this afternoon. Here is what we do know. Jack Smith was named special counsel after a memo was written by Chris Wray, then the director of the FBI, saying, we think there could possibly have been some kind of conversation between some conservative members and President Donald Trump, and it all centers around the 2020 election. So what we want to do is do some investigating to see if there could possibly, might have been some kind of activity. So they, on April 4th of 22, you have this memo written by Chris Wray. And the next day, Lisa Monaco, the deputy attorney general at the time, to Merrick Garland, the attorney general, Lisa Monaco says, I'm signing off on this. You should too. And Merrick Garland signs off. So then Jack Smith is appointed as the special counsel, and he starts his fishing expedition. And what they did was to spy on 8 U.S. senators. The commonality there is we're all Republicans who support President Trump and had valid questions about the 2020 election. It was a total fishing expedition. There is no predicate for them doing this. They went to a judge. They got a subpoena. They go to our wireless carriers. Now, AT&T moved to quash, and they challenged the subpoena, and Jack Smith's people backed down. Verizon, my carrier, did not, and therefore they turned over the records of every call I either made or received, who the call was from, the duration of the phone, the call, the number of the phone, and the physical location where I was standing when I either made or received that phone call. It is an invasion and a violation of my First Amendment and Fourth Amendment rights, the speech and debate clause, the separation of powers, and also the Stored Communication Act.
Senator, obviously we want to live in a country where everybody's treated equally under the law and whatnot, but also I'm understanding that you have a bit more of an important job than I do. To do this to a United States Senator it's so brazen. This has to be criminal, right? And I don't want to sound naive because I understand you said a judge signed off on it, but we are supposed to live in a system where this kind of thing can't happen, even if you have a scumbag in charge of the FBI or Lisa Monaco doing the things Lisa Monaco's always done. There should be laws that stop this. Why weren't there?
That stop this. And it is a violation. And yes, it is criminal. And that is why my colleagues and I have written to the current AG, Pam Bondi, and have asked for a referral of Jack Smith to the Office of Professional Conduct at the DOJ. It is also why Kash Patel didn't waste any time. He fired every single one of these staff attorneys and staff members that were part of that CR-15 unit that worked with Jack Smith. And it's also why I've written the DC Bar with a letter of complaint about Jack Smith. He should be disbarred, and he should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, along with every member of his team that carried this out. And we know that they have also spied on over 100 conservative organizations. And here's the thing. If they're going to do this to 8 sitting U.S. senators, and it is unlawful to do this, then what are they going to do to conservatives all across this country that do not share their opinion? Or if you have some FBI field office that has somebody in it that doesn't like a member of somebody in their community or a member of their church or the family of somebody that's in elected office. Think about the power that they have to just really wreck people's lives. We need one tier of justice. Lady Justice is blindfolded. It should be equal access, equal treatment, equal justice. And the Democrats carried out weaponization of the DOJ and the FBI. They carried it out against us. And we are going to get to the bottom of it so we end this. No one, no Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party, whatever, no one should be subject to this kind of treatment.
What about Christopher Wray? You can't use the Federal Bureau of Investigation as your little plaything to help Democrats out and attack Republicans. That is honestly, that is a crime. In my opinion, that is worse than murder. That is maybe the worst crime in the United States you can commit because of the power that comes with the position. When does Christopher Wray go behind bars?
Well, and he is someone that we will bring forward in our hearings. And we've got a meeting as to how we at Judiciary Committee are going to move forward on this. If we're going to compel people or end up subpoenaing people to come before us and have them under oath. But the fact that he's the one that wrote the memo that got Arctic frost started, he wrote the memo. And the language in it, and it is on my social media, Marsha Blackburn, and it's also on our blackburn.senate.gov website. People can pull it up, they can look at it and read and just see how nebulous a lot of this language is and how wide ranging. He wrote it so that you could scoop up people and then go scrape information and try to get a subpoena and get their phone records and then try to track everybody they were talking to and how long they were on the phone with that individual. And if they call person A and talk to them, then did they call person B, and then did they call person A back, or did they bring in person C? And then, and where I was physically located. And was I at home? This is just one of those things you say, how could something have been this invasive and this intrusive? And they think they're going to get by with it. And you know what? Had Kamala Harris won the election, we would never know how weaponized the Department of Justice and the FBI was, not only under Joe Biden, but under Barack Obama.
Senator, shifting gears away from this, did someone try to kill you?
Well, yes, we have someone who has is on house arrest at this point, and that really is about all I can say about it because it's gone to a grand jury.
Okay, all right, then I'm not going to ask you to ruin that whole thing. Let's shift gears to this shutdown. I don't see how it ends. The Democrats know it has to end, but their base is going to freak out on them if they end the freaking thing. It seems like they're stuck.
Chuck Schumer had planned this shutdown for months. That's why it's the Schumer shutdown. Basically, the Democrats decided to go on strike and close down the federal government. It's like they're filibustering moving forward on appropriations bills, even though they're saying they're shutting down the government because they want to get some things done on healthcare. Well, as you know, Jesse, you can't talk about what is going to be covered by federal appropriations unless you are working on the appropriations bills. So they shut down the government because they say they want to work on healthcare, but you can't do it because the government is shut down. So the whole thing is ridiculous. And now we're up against the deadline with SNAP benefits. They run out on Saturday, November 1st. People are going to swipe those EBT cards and there will be nothing there. So in Tennessee, we've been talking to a lot of the food banks and elected officials and people that are involved. Churches are doing food drives for some of the food banks. And we know that people are stepping up to fill the gap. We've got about 700,000 families across the state that are receiving their SNAP and WIC benefits.
Senator, thank you as always, ma'am. Stay safe out there. I love sleeping. I slept again like a little baby last night. And I had, it's a long story, I had to meet somebody for coffee in the afternoon. So I had a cup of coffee, 3, 4 in the afternoon. And already I'm thinking to myself, crap, I'm not going to be able to sleep. But I slept like a baby. How did I pull that off? About 9 o'clock last night, watching a little show with Ob, made myself a little cup of hot chocolate from Dream Powder. That's what Dream Powder is, from Beam. It's hot chocolate. Mine is cinnamon chocolate. It's my favorite. It's delicious. You would never know there's anything to it, but it has all these natural things in it. You'll just drift off to sleep. 20, 30 minutes, about how long it takes me. Eyes will start getting a little heavy, and I go knock out. And I wake up feeling like $1 million. You should always have a bag of Dream Powder in your house go to shopbeam.com/Jesse Kelly.
It was, not expected to be a victory. It was very Democrat areas, but I don't think it was good for Republicans. I don't think it was good. I'm not sure it was good for anybody. But we had an interesting evening, and we learned a lot.
Interesting. Certainly wasn't good. I just reemphasize what I said in the open, that it was bad. We've had bad nights before. I'm not sure that it spells doom. Mike Cernovich, my friend Mike Cernovich, who's joining us right now, thinks that we are in some trouble if some things don't change, and I think he deserves the floor. Mike, the floor is yours.
Well, I felt that way the minute Trump won. I posted November 11th, 2024. Somebody could find that tweet that we need to worry about the midterms. So here's the thing that everybody, not you, but the consultant class misses. They go, well, Trump drives Democrat turnout when he's on the ballot, but he drives Republican turnout. So if you look at 2016, Trump wins, GOP has a trifecta. 2018, Trump's off ballot, blue wave. 2020, Republicans, remember in 2020, Republicans were supposed to lose the Senate and the House, right? That was the prediction. No, the only person who lost in 2020 was Trump, right? Which is why a lot of people, myself included, even if you didn't buy the really kooky theories about the stolen election, you did say, well, how is it that the Senate stayed Republican, but somehow Trump lost? Okay. Special elections, Trump's not on ballot, Georgia loses 2 Senate seats. 2022, what happens? 2024, what happens? So the GOP does not exist. It is the Trump party. It is Trump's GOP. So even if last night hadn't happened, I was already worried about the midterms. I was worried about the midterms the week Trump won. I was like, I'm always like the Cassandra. I tried to be like a Debbie Downer because people who know me know that I'm a pretty upbeat guy. But what's our plan to win in 2026 with Trump off the ballot? And then, of course, last night was a bad night.
Okay, Mike, so what is it about the GOP voter that is uniquely motivated to vote for Trump, to your point, but when Donald Trump's name is not on there, he's just not interested? He cares about these issues when Trump is on the ballot, but doesn't when he's not? Help me understand.
Sure. I was getting coffee and I was sort of thinking what we talk about. And I was going to ask you the question. If your job weren't politics and media, would you vote in the 2026 midterms?
I would, but I vote in every single election because I think it matters. I think it's extremely important. Of course I would.
But you had a pause. You're just like, it's not like, well, of course I would. Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I be hyped? Right? Trump voters are hyped to vote. If I said a week before 2024, you're going to vote, you're like, what kind of stupid, idiotic question? Of course, obviously I'm going to vote, right? Obviously, in 2026, it's like, well, intellectually, I know that it's important and there are real problems if I don't vote. And you run it through your head, but you don't feel it, right? You don't feel it in your heart. And that's everybody if we're just being honest. It's like if you were honest, not you, but I'm just saying like the collective, the royal we, right? If we're all being honest, we would say, I mean, yeah, I get it. You got to vote Republican because look at what Schumer did. But people who don't live in politics and media don't go vote because of that, right? They don't go vote because of that. They need to feel a calling. They need to feel an energy and a momentum to go out and vote. And that doesn't happen with Trump not on the ballot. So then to be positive, how can Republicans draw out more voters? Well, they could do Republican things like I'm seeing right now, Ted Cruz, who, by the way, I'm 90% pro Ted Cruz. When Ted Cruz had a close race with Beto, obviously I was like, this is crazy. You have to vote for Ted Cruz and everything. But I'm against this trend of people in the Senate being podcasters and influencers, right? You're in the Senate. I can post about things. Jesse Kelly, we can be on Twitter all day, and I know that they have to do some kind of media. So I'm not saying some media, but do things in the Senate that make people want to vote. What's Mike Johnson really doing? They always have an excuse. Oh, we need 60 votes. We can't do anything. But in 2024, they were going to have 60 votes for amnesty because you couldn't close the border without. Remember that? This is why I'm tired of being gaslit by Mike Johnson and Ted Cruz and everybody. In 2024, Lindsey Graham and Langford and Fool, whatever his name is, they all said we can't shut the border unless we do amnesty. It's the only way to do it. But we better come out in 2026 because why? Because why? Right?
Okay, so let's talk domestically, Mike, because you've been making this point, and I'll be honest with you, I'm looking at a stack of I don't know how many emails, and there are a lot of these emails from people who make the point that you have been ranting about online about a domestic focus from Trump and the GOP. That people, they're even fine with, go drop some bombs on Iran, sounds fine, whatever. But they don't care about that deeply. They care that they can't afford to go see their mother on vacation. They can't afford groceries. They can't afford a pound of burger. And they don't see a lot of movement on those things.
No, they don't. They don't see none. I'm having people texting me like chuck roast is expensive now, which goes to show what people are thinking about economically. They're not focused on the foreign stuff. The foreign stuff. The deal that was struck in 2024 that should have been struck was, hey, look, people like me, I don't care about Israel. I don't really care. My opinion on Israel would probably get me canceled because it's not anti-Israel. It's probably so pro-Israel that it would make me look like a ghoul. But you got to carry your own weight. Israel's got to wrap this stuff up. They got to wrap it up. I'm not here scolding you or doing the moralizing. This is what war looked like. We've just never had it live stream. But you can't do propaganda for the other side every day. You can't give them more video footage every day. You got to wrap it up. And then we got to go domestic. That was the deal, stated and unstated. And yet here we are a year after Trump's election. And if you asked the average man on the street, not the DC policy wonk, if you ask the average man on the street, what has Trump's priority been over the last year? They're going to say, well, Ukraine, Israel, the Nobel Peace Prize. That's what they're going to say. And it sounds like that's what your audience is saying too. A lot of your audience.
It is. I hear a lot of it, Mike. And this is what has concerned me with the Venezuela stuff. The normal person, I'm not talking about the normal commie who trumps the devil, all that stuff. I'm talking about normal people, the people that I talk to in my life because I don't hang around with political people. When they brought up Venezuela, admit everyone likes a little video on their phone of a drug boat getting incinerated. No one's crying for those dirtballs. But I got asked a lot, Mike, why? Why are we down there? Why are we messing with it? It's not that it's not a righteous cause. I got a lot of, well, why do I care? There's a lot of that.
Especially when we know that fentanyl is not coming primarily from Venezuela, right? It's another instance where, yeah, I'm the same way. I think we shouldn't have gone to the Middle East. I think that we should have taken over most of Latin America and Southern America and run it as part of the Roman Empire. That's my view. But now people have no appetite for regime change war. Another side quest, another foreign policy. Okay, we got Ukraine, we have Israel. Okay, fine. Can we do domestic issues? No, we're going to do regime change war. Now, I know that there's going to be a lot of people, myself included, who could counteract my argument by listing everything done. And my answer to that is I understand that. I'm not saying this is my personal belief. I'm telling you that what we know is not what the average person and the voters who come out for Trump, they're not experiencing the same thing because they don't have all day to monitor this stuff, right? You got to look at people are busy. People got stuff going on. Times are tough. A lot of people are working two jobs. What information is getting filtered down to them? And it's almost nothing. Even though I could list off. I could make the case for why Trump is the best president of my lifetime. I could do that standing on my head while also thinking we're going to lose the midterms unless we turn this around.
Can we turn it around by the midterms, Mike? Can we make the necessary adjustments and get the things done to get it done? Or is this, fighting the ocean? Is it inevitable?
it's not inevitable. We got a year from Mondami. So we got Mondami for a year. We got a lot of things that can go bad for the Democrats over the next year, right? A lot can happen in a year. How's the quote go? Nothing happens in a year, and then years happen in a decade, or decades happen in a year. Something like that could happen, but the Venezuela thing could go sideways. The problem with Venezuela, even though I'm not opposed to regime change wars. I have a very Roman mindset about a lot of this stuff. I just think that if we're going to go over there, you have to run it like a colony. You have to colonize it, which is why people forget. We won. People say, oh, we lost the war in Afghanistan. It's like the military didn't lose. It was the occupation because people are afraid to be colonizers. So I'm not some anti-colony woke guy. But a lot can go wrong in the Venezuela thing. And what can go right? We already got the oil deal that we need. So what exactly is the win versus American troops could die? Well, then we're going to have to retaliate. Are we going to be in a hot war with Venezuela? What in the world, right? What's our upside here? That's kind of what people are seeing. And if Trump doesn't come home, so to speak, then we are looking at a Democrat midterm win, and we are looking at more impeachment, and we are looking at a repeat of the hell of the Adam Schiff era.
Oh, gosh. Mike, as always, thank you, brother. I appreciate you. All right, it's time to lighten the mood. And I keep using this term because it makes me sound smart. Litigious. You've heard this term before. Previously, those of us on the right, maybe you call yourself a conservative, we didn't like the idea of suing people. You can't sue people. You shouldn't sue people. That's what the left does. But the truth is that it is an effective tool against people, especially people in the media who lie about you. You're not allowed, you shouldn't be allowed to use these big public platforms to tell outright lies. And Donald Trump, to his credit, is litigious. He started suing all these big media companies and getting multi-million-dollar settlements because they would just get up and tell gigantic lies. Now, the communist relies on lies. We talk about this all the time. He builds and maintains a world of make-believe for his brain-dead followers. Your liberal Aunt Peggy believes a bunch of things that aren't real. Because we have started to sue when they tell outright lies, we now are treated routinely to legal disclaimers like this one on The View.
The Trump family has made about $1.8 billion profited off of this government. And he said that Joe Biden didn't know who he was pardoning using an auto pen. How come he don't know who this guy is?
Because he used an auto pen. Meetings with the judge, the meetings that they're supposed to go to when they're listening to what the hell, what?
I love when Sonny passes notes.
We don't know if Trump used an auto pen to part. It was a joke.
Yes. We don't know if Trump used an auto pen to part.
Come on.
But we do know that he didn't know who that crypto guy was.
Well, I'm sorry. The hardest thing about this job now is no one understands nuance. When you hear a joke, when somebody's fooling around, when they're not saying something specific, especially on this show. I'm very specific when I'm pointing stuff out. When I'm making jokes, when I'm making jokes. This is ridiculous. Anywho.
They're so mad. Why can't I just lie? It's wonderful. See you tomorrow.